Welcome to the Ghana Research and Innovation Support Programs Coordinating Office. In this instructional video, I'll be taking you step by step through the standard operating procedures developed for the Ghana Innovation and Research Commercialization Center. Public research institutions, universities, and industries, collectively referred to as institutions, can also utilize these SOPs to improve the quality of their research outcome. This SOP has been developed to assist the GIRC-Centre staff with the management and administration of grants in relation to grants lifecycle processes. This includes grants that are submitted by the GIRC-Centre's board and the guidelines which will also form the basis for interested parties like the GIRC-Centre, external auditors, or funders to test effective management of awards. It is further divided into two sections, namely, grant application process. This section guides users through the most common situations encountered while going through the grant development process, including what policies and procedures are in place to ensure that the grant application is successfully submitted. See next few slides for grant application process flowchart. 2. Post-award procedures. This area provides direction on grants management and compliance policies, and also the procedures to be followed once a grant is awarded to the GIRC-Centre. The SOP covers all GIRC-Centre activities relating to planning, launching, evaluating and awarding grants and procurement calls, and then managing the resulting contracts. It also covers all GIRC-Centre staff and individuals responsible for the award's financial information. The GIRC-Centre operational policies and procedures contained in this grants management manual are based on policies approved by the board and grants lifecycle. Please pay closer attention. The preceding definitions are applicable to this SOP, therefore must be well understood. Direct costs. Direct costs are those costs that can be identified specifically with a particular sponsored project, or that can be directly assigned to such activity relatively easily with a high degree of accuracy. Typical direct costs include personnel compensation, fringe benefits, material, travel, and equipment. Allowability. For direct costs to be considered allowable, the following criteria must be met. They are necessary and reasonable for the project, conform to limitations and/or exclusions listed in the uniform guidance, are consistent with related policies and procedures, and are consistently treated across projects, are in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles, which is GAAP, are not used to meet a cost-sharing requirement on another project, and are adequately documented. Allocatability. A direct cost is allocable to a sponsored project if it is incurred specifically for the sponsored project, or it benefits both the sponsored project and the other work of the institution and can be distributed in proportions that can be approximated using reasonable methods. Reasonableness. A direct cost is reasonable if it passes the prudent person test. The nature and amount of the cost do not exceed what a prudent person would have determined when incurring the cost in the same circumstances. Consistency. Direct costs must be treated consistently with respect to institutional policies that apply to sponsored and non-sponsored activity, and to treatment as a direct or an indirect cost when incurred for the same purpose in like circumstances across sponsored and non-sponsored activity. Costs. Several specific cost items are identified as unequivocally unallowable on a sponsored project, either as a direct or an indirect cost, including, for example, alcohol as entertainment, bad debt, personal use of automobiles, and losses that could have been covered by insurance. Other cost items can also be charged with the prior written approval from the sponsor, including, for example, entertainment, buildings and land, and students' activities. Individual sponsor and project requirements may identify additional unallowable costs. Grant managers, GMs, and team leads, TLs, must review sponsor policies and award documents for specific guidance. The guidelines for management of all grants channeled to the GIRC-Centre are detailed as follows. Stage 1. Pre-award. Grant submission processes and checklist. A. Introduction. Pre-award services are the activities and processes that legally and ethically enable GIRC-Centre to obtain externally funded research and sponsored programs. The services generally include 1. Dissemination of funding opportunities and information. 2. Assisting with the proposal document. 3. Reviewing and approving proposals for submission by the GIRC-Centre. 4. Managing the proposal submission process. 5. Negotiating, accepting and activating an award. B. Policies and procedures. The GIRC-Centre Board will issue the necessary guidelines and procedures, or will amend the existing ones to implement what is established in this policy. Each sponsored project represents a contract between the grantor, either a government agency, foundation, or corporation, and the GIRC-Centre. All proposals seeking grant awards externally must obtain administrative approval through the board. C. Dissemination of funding opportunities and information. The first step towards external funding success is the identification of sources of funding opportunities and search for sponsor information. The information available to the center, as well as the one presented herein, must be periodically updated to assure that the center keeps abreast about common and new sources of funding and new developments affecting the grant-seeking process. Proposal development, review, and approval. Once the center staff identify the most appropriate sponsor and grant mechanism, the proposal development and preparation process begins. Proposals are typically very technical documentations that must adequately respond to all sponsor requirements. Failure to do so may lead to administrative withdrawals of submitted grants and awards by the sponsor. The Business Development and Research Office, BDRO, and grants offices provide guidance in this process. Furthermore, a series of sponsors have developed excellent web-based resources to assist in the proposal preparation and submission processes. Submission process and PI checklist. Identify. Locate an appropriate funding opportunity for the center. Notify. Email your supervisor and appropriate officials at least 2 weeks prior to the sponsor's proposal submission deadline regarding intent to submit a proposal for external funds or proposed grants. Inform the Business Development Office at the earliest opportunity that you intend to apply for funding. If given sufficient notice, this office can assist you in planning and developing your application as well as with technical matters. Provide the following pre-application information: intent to submit a proposal form, and materials to the Office of Sponsored Programs and Research at least 10 business days before the sponsor deadline. Pre-application information and materials also to be provided at least 10 business days before sponsor deadline. Include name of sponsoring agency and specific funding opportunity. Project title. Proposed project and program period. Abstract or concept, it may be in a draft form. Budget narrative or justification, with costs itemized and any cost sharing specified. If cost sharing is involved, provide the account numbers or number from which the center funds will be drawn. Contact information for project lead or administrator at each participating institution other than the center, if any. Contact information for each individual non-GIRC-Centre contributor, that's a consultant, if any. A list of your current and pending support if requested by the sponsor. Any other financial information to be included in the application. Any language that is to be included in the application and addresses whether the GIRC-Centre will support or sustain the project beyond the award termination date. Stage 2. Post-award. This part includes the following types of activities. 1. Monitoring expenses for allowability, allocability, reasonableness, and compliance with university policies. 2. Reporting and invoicing the sponsor on project expenses. 3. Drawdown of funds in the form of checks and wire transfers and posting them to the corresponding accounts. 4. Monitoring spending against budget, noting certain trends such as overspending or underspending. 5. Completing the required programmatic and financial reports. 6. Closing out the award by ensuring all requirements have been satisfied, including collection of interim and final progress reports, invention reporting, equipment reporting, and salary certifications, among others. The post-award process is completed with the following steps. 1. Receiving the contract or award. When a grantor issues an award or declination, official notification will be made via phone, letter, and/or email. Recipients typically include the TL, the Business Development Office if awarded. The TL will receive an official grant award notification, which is a GAN, which must be fully executed by the TL. 2. Grant or contract award notices. Once a proposal is awarded, the award documentation will be received or forwarded to the Business Development and Grants Unit for corresponding processes. This document is a legally binding document between the awarding agency and the GIRC-Centre establishing funding level, period of support, terms and conditions, and contact information, among others. The Centre is legally responsible for proper conduct and execution of the project and assures compliance with grantors' policies and procedures. 3. Negotiation and acceptance. Each sponsored project award comes with a unique set of terms and conditions, which may range from entirely flexible to restrictive. The TL, in coordination with the Office of Sponsored Programs and Research, is responsible for reviewing the award document and, if need be, negotiating the terms and conditions attached to an award. The goals in negotiation are to protect the Centre's publication and intellectual property rights, to protect the institution against harmful or unmanageable stipulations, and to ensure any agreement is in keeping with national as well as Centre requirements. Communications or dissemination. The team lead will send communication either via email or other electronic platforms for immediate release and dissemination to Centre staff. All fully executed award notifications will be kept on file in the Business Development or Grants Unit. It is the responsibility of the TL to forward a copy of the contract, budget, which is signed by their authorized personnel, and award notification letter to the Business Development Office or the Grants Office. 5. Project account setup. Once all requirements and terms and conditions are discussed, the grants manager or finance manager will begin the process to request a unique cost code or account for each contract under the auspices of the Center. This should be in compliance with the Center financial policies and systems. The TL will be notified and will be expected to meet with sector leads for appropriate training sessions for efficient administration of the grant. The BDRO, Grant Manager, and TL will discuss the terms and conditions, which are the project objectives and goals, period of performance, required sponsors, programmatic report frequency and deadlines, invoicing or drawdowns, allowable or unallowable costs stated in the award notice. Financial management of the grant. The procedures for the management of grants are meant to ensure that the funds received by the Center from the sponsors are banked intact, efficiently managed, that is, funds are spent according to the budget, properly recorded in appropriate recommended books of accounts, accurately accounted for by appropriate support documents, and timely presentation of financial and narrative reports. The undermentioned procedures will help achieve the above goals. These procedures are categorized as follows: bank account administration, funding request procedure and disbursement in compliance with sponsor guidelines, check payments procedure, general payments, petty cash administration, procurements of goods and services, financial records, books of accounts and supporting documentation, accounting for funds to be based on the type of grant, financial reports, filing, and financial management. For bank accounts administration, the following will be required: the nature and the name of the account. A current bank account, not savings or fixed deposit account, will be opened up by the grantee to handle all grant funds from the sponsor. This will be done as soon as the grant agreement between the Center and the sponsor is signed. The account will strictly be used for only funds from sponsor and to pay for expenditures related to the project sponsor is funding. Funds from other donors, although they may be for the same project, will be banked and transacted from a separate account. Signatories to the account. The bank account will have signatories. These must be GIRC authorized personnel who should be made known to sponsor in writing once the account has been opened up. Any changes in the signatories will be notified to sponsor as soon as they occur. The signatories to the account will also be the grantee's authorized officials or staff to approve funding requests and reports. Interest. In the event that the current account in question is an interest-earning account, all interest earned on the grant account will be reported following sponsors' guidelines. Loans or overdrafts. Under no circumstances will the grant bank account be overdrawn through an overdraft or loan for purposes of securing additional funding for the project. The bank will be informed in writing about this standing instruction when opening the account. In case the bank acts contrary to this standing instruction and grants a loan or an overdraft to the Center, the sponsor will not be liable for the entire overdraft or loan granted and interest charges. Funding request procedure and disbursements from sponsor. Disbursement of funds. After the grant agreement has been signed and the Center has opened the appropriate bank account as mentioned above, sponsor will make disbursements of the grant via the agreed platform to the grantee's bank account. The amount of this disbursement will be based on the agreed requirements on the work plan and annual grant budget. It is the responsibility of the Center to ensure that costs incurred are in accordance with the applicable set of cost principles. Upon receipt of funds from the sponsor, the Center will send an acknowledgement of receipt of funds to the sponsor office as documentary evidence that the funds were actually received by the center, signed by authorized personnel. General payments will include the various project activities and administrative costs such as stationery, bank charges, local transport, telephone, etc. The following procedure will be followed. The various staff responsible for carrying out the activities in the various grantee projects and activities will initiate the process of payments by requisitioning for the funds using the GIRC-Centre prescribed form. Such activities will be in the approved work plan and budget for the month. The respective TL will approve requisitions for funds. To the extent possible, payments should be made by electronic fund transfer. The center will maintain an electronic fund transfer counter folio for all electronic fund transferred issued. This will show the electronic fund transfer number, payee, date prepared, and amount paid. For all third-party payments, a receipt will be received from the payee, clearly explaining the transaction being paid for. It will be the responsibility of the accountant or someone acting in that capacity to follow up the payee for any receipt or acknowledgements not received instantly. Cancelled electronic fund transfers will be stamped cancelled and filed. All payment vouchers in support of transactions will be stamped paid so as to guard against making double payments. Petty cash administration. The center shall operate petty cash in accordance with its financial management procedure. The amount of petty cash held in office by the grantee will be kept at a minimum in order to minimize risk which may arise out of holding large sums of cash. Procurement of goods and services. The procurement of goods shall be in accordance with sponsors' guidelines. The guideline will be used in conjunction with the center. In cases where it is not specified, the center will use its procurement policies and practices for the procurement of goods and services under the grants provided they conform with all sponsors' requirements. In any case, the center will ensure that there is a mechanism in place that will ensure that goods are procured at appropriate prices and are of appropriate quality. Financial records or books of accounts. It will be the responsibility of the board and the TL of the center to ensure that there is a sound accounting system in place and that the accounting function is adequately staffed with skilled personnel. The system will ensure that adequate and proper records are consistently maintained. All records must be supported by appropriate documentation and will show all receipts and costs incurred under the grant. As the minimum requirements, the following books or records or reports will be kept or prepared: cash book, bank reconciliation statement, monthly budget or actual expenditure reports, accumulated expenditure reports, continuing grants and contracts. Continuing grants and contracts. The TL for the center is signatory authority and serves as the project binding agent for all continuing contracts and grants, including amendments, renegotiated budgets, and annual budget requests that are awarded to the center. All fully executed documentation, including amended contracts, awards, annual reports, final reports, and closeout documentation should be sent to the grants office for archival. Responsibility and compliance. Grant awards are made to the center, not an individual. Therefore, the center assumes full legal responsibility for ensuring that all funds received through the award are used for the purposes and intent outlined in the conditions of the contractual agreement. Grants and contracts carry administrative responsibilities involving strict accountability, time and effort reports and certifications. As a recipient of sponsored funds, the center must assure its sponsors that the assignment of effort and associated salary and fringe benefits cost to the projects they sponsor is reasonable in relation to the work performed, and that commitments to sponsors have been met. The Centre's effort reporting policies and procedures are the means by which these effort reporting and effort certification responsibilities are fulfilled. Each personnel's effort report accounts for 100% of the effort required in achieving the employee's obligation or professional activities for the Centre, that's the total professional effort, TPE, and for which the employee is compensated by the Centre in their institutional base salary, which is the IBS. All individuals involved in the effort certification process are expected to abide strictly by the policies and procedures contained herein. File management and archiving. The TL will ensure that all files are prepared for storage and/or archiving at the end of the grant cycle. The Business and Research Development Office will ensure that appropriate notifications are made as to storage and following of protocol for Centre. Records should be readily and reasonably retrievable upon request by the funding agency for a period of not less than 5 years. Technical or narrative reports required by the funding agency are to be prepared by the TL. All reports are to be reviewed by the Research and Business Development Office for submission. Once reviewed and approved, the report will then be forwarded to the funding agency. The TL must maintain all appropriate documentation for that narrative. The TL will work with the Business and Research Development Office and with the grants accountant in the submission of all financial reports. TLs are responsible for obtaining and communicating all due dates for reporting, including the final closeout report, to the Research and Business Development Office and GIRC-Centre grants accountant. Note: all grants drawdowns will be reported to the TL in a timely manner by the BDRO and grants accountant. Post-award checklist. TL submits award notification letter, budget signed by authorized personnel, and fully executed contract to the BDRO. TL reviews the contract in its entirety and remains aware of all elements of the agreement. BDRO will send a news brief to the Centre's Office of Communications team for immediate release and dissemination to the staff. The TL must schedule a meeting with the BDRO and research grants specialist and grants accountant and obtain training regarding administration and management of the grant. The TL complies with Centre, national and sponsor requirements under the award contract. Time and effort tracking for all grant-funded personnel if required. Please contact the BDRO and grants accountant for details. Project closeout, property management, and disposal reporting requirements. At the conclusion of a sponsored project, the terms of the award generally require written reports, including a final technical or project report or a report of expenditures, which must be submitted to the sponsor within a specified period of time. These reports are generally viewed as the Centre fundamental obligation to the sponsor and are generally required whether the sponsor is a private organization or a public agency. Federal awards, according to uniform guidance, are subject to the following requirements. Technical. Unless otherwise indicated, final performance reports are due 90 to 120 calendar days after the expiration or termination of the award, depending on the sponsor guidelines. When required, performance reports shall generally contain, for each award, brief information to address the following requirements: a comparison of actual accomplishments in relation to the goals and objectives established for the period, the findings of the TL, or both. Reasons established goals were not met, if appropriate, and other pertinent information, including, when appropriate, analysis and explanation of cost overruns or high unit costs. The TL is responsible for preparing and submitting this report. A dated copy of the report or letter of transmittal should be sent to the BDRO, serving as audit verification that the report was filed. Financial. Most sponsors generally require a final accounting to document how the funding was spent. Federal awards require a standard financial status report, which is prepared by the Grant Accounting Office, sent to the TL for approval, then submitted to the Federal Awarding Agency. Inventions. Most federal funding agencies require some sort of reporting to indicate whether inventions have resulted from the sponsored project. Federal agencies require the grantee, which is the center, to submit a final invention report or statement and certification, whether an invention has resulted from work under the funded project or not. Property. Federal agencies always require the GIRC to account for any real or personal property acquired with federal funds. A report is prepared using agency-specific forms, identifying the equipment purchased, acquisition cost, make, model number, serial number, inventory number, and condition. If the terms of the award do not automatically give title to the university, a letter is sent to the agency requesting transfer of title to the center. Federal closeout procedure. Uniform guidelines require federally funded projects to complete the following closeout steps. Recipients shall submit within 90 calendar days after the date of completion of the award all financial, performance, and other reports as required by the terms and conditions of the award. The Federal Awarding Agency may approve extensions when requested by the recipient. Unless the Federal Awarding Agency authorizes an extension, a recipient shall liquidate all obligations incurred under the award not later than 90 calendar days after the funding period or the date of completion as specified in the terms and conditions of the award or in agency implementing instructions. The Federal Awarding Agency shall make prompt payments to a recipient for allowable reimbursable costs under the award being closed out. The recipient shall promptly refund any balances of unobligated cash that the Federal Awarding Agency has advanced or paid and that is not authorized to be retained by the recipient for use in other projects. When authorized by the terms and conditions of the award, the Federal Awarding Agency shall make a settlement for any upward or downward adjustments to the federal share of costs after closeout reports are received. The recipient shall account for any real and personal property acquired with federal funds or received from the federal government. In the event a final audit has not been performed prior to the closeout of the award, the Federal Awarding Agency shall retain the right to recover an appropriate amount after fully considering the recommendations on disallowed costs resulting from the final audit. In conclusion, procedures for equipment disposal. Unless otherwise stated in the award terms and conditions, the title to equipment acquired under a sponsored agreement belongs to the university. The university is obliged to track and account for all equipment acquired with federal funds.